Hello, everybody, and welcome to Empower Hour. My name is Jim Paconin. I am here with our most excellent panel in our second show of 2023. And today, I think we're going to talk about how to create an empowered 2023. Because if we think about it, by now, a good percentage of people have already forgotten about their New Year's resolutions and they're starting to fall back into old patterns. And I would like to take an episode and talk about how to stay empowered through the year. But before we do this, I have to pop a question into my head and ask my incredible co-host to, I know I love the look on that, and I don't have a question quite yet. So the question for today is, and we'll have Amy start since I'll give her little or no time because she so loves that, is
Loves it.
are you doing anything different in the last 10 days than you did in 2022? Coach Amy, maybe answer the question and tell us what your superpower is.
Not particularly. I am far more hyper-focused on human design than I was in 2022. However, having hyper focuses and fixations and deep dives is not any different to what I did in 2022. So the yes and no, really. So definitely the hyperfixation of human design. I'm trying to work out if that kicked in. I mean, in the last 3 or 4 days, I've been daily checking the transits. It's got nothing to do with the new year as such. It's just got to do with a new obsession. And so, yeah, checking in with the transits, checking in with video creation, leveraging those transits for the enthusiasm that's coming through for me. But becoming hyper fixated, becoming hyper focused, obsessing on a particular topic, that's not new for me. That's a lifelong pattern, which may translate into one of my superpowers is my ability to hyper focus, dive deep. I learn especially quickly and I absorb information effortlessly. That is definitely one of my superpowers, and the ability to, it's interesting, I posted in the human design group yesterday about the current transit that's going on, and someone said, I've been studying this stuff for 7 years and you've given me a greater insight than I've ever had from any of my mentors over the last 7 years. And I've been playing with this for, I don't know, 4 weeks at this point.
4 weeks, yeah. Now it's 4 weeks, okay? when most people will have just scratched the surface, you are finding more information than those that have 7 years plus of studying this thing called the human design.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, that comes down to my ability to absorb information and turn it into wisdom. And also, and we talked about this the other day, Jim, my willingness to jump right in and take action. So the moment I learnt tarot, I started a new tarot course last night, and I downloaded another one last night because that's what I do. I do like 5 courses at once and overlay them. Most people haven't taken action on the first module, whereas I've downloaded a second one and dove into more things. And so my ability to learn is very, very closely linked with my willingness to take action, my willingness to take this out to other people. I'm more than happy to go into a session with a client, a paying client, and say, I've got this new tool, I've got this new thing that I'm playing with. Are you open to us exploring? I have no idea where it will go. And I have always offered, if you don't get value from this conversation, I'll give you a refund. I've never had anybody ask me for a refund for that, because we go in, I dive in, I offer insights, I offer value. It doesn't matter what it is that I'm playing with. So I think that answers my, what am I doing new? I'm obsessing on something new, which isn't new for me in terms of obsessions. And what is my superpower? And that is a glimpse of my many, many superpowers, because there are not limited to one.
Quite brilliant. Angelito, how would you answer? I know, I love that too. And again, and before we get to Angelito, my request is that you post those videos in Empower Hour.
Yeah, I will. I'll start sharing them in.
Yes, I find them fascinating. So Angelito, how would you answer those two questions today?
Like Amy, I the only I had a little bit more time to think about my answer as Amy was giving her answer. But I think the only thing different is my sense of urgency has upped a little bit. Like
Mhm.
where in 2022 it was more I gave things a little bit more thought to so I can get a bigger, like a clearer picture of things. And so far, what I've noticed in the past 10 days is just like hyper action.
Right.
And I'm using, and the way I am able to do that is because I'm keeping the vision of what I want clear.
Mhm.
And I think, that helps us with the conversation that we're having today. And what I think my superpower is, and what I bring to the table in this context, is the ability to break things down and to and
Mm.
to make it more understandable and you know and digestible.
That's brilliant. I will say that in the last month now, I have written a book.
Oh yeah,
I had something
Mhm.
happen in November that literally changed my coaching path.
that was 2 months ago, by the way.
Oh, that
November.
Mm.
was 2 months ago. Yes. But a month ago, I decided to write a book and I decided
That's
to
amazing.
actually hire a book coach. So now I have two coaches. For those of you out there who say, oh, I can do this without hiring a coach. No, let me tell you, when you hire a coach, because right now I have two of them and they are both like together. The biggest difference I'm seeing is that 2023 is just going to rock. Um, my superpower is assisting people to literally create their transformation. And this book is going
Mm.
to be a way that I'm creating transformation in my life. And it has the very unique challenges that make the book even more effective. So that's how things
Hmm,
are are kind of that's how this thing called 2023 is percolating right now.
I love it.
So yeah.
Love it.
And
And today,
congratulations to the both of you, by the way. I mean, we're 10 days into the new year,
yeah.
and Amy is now like taking over the entire industry of human design, and Jim is launching a book
Yeah.
like that he
Well,
started a month ago.
a
Like,
book, online program,
mhm.
group, it's going to end up to have group coaching and it's going to all kind of intermingle. This book is going to have actual little links and resources and things to do. So yeah, it is. And I must admit, I have an accountability buddy, and my accountability buddy, it's funny because I know we only do our accountability stuff Monday through Friday, but I tell you what, this year, quite literally, I am on fire and I love that.
Love
And
it.
for the people out there, whether you are a coach or whether you are someone that just chooses to empower their life, or whether you are someone that says in 2023, I am going to shift my life. Part of the topic today is, how does one stay on track? Because we all know on January 1, everybody made all of these New Year's resolutions, right? The gyms were full. Um, and yet they say by the end of January, which is 20 days from now, most of those resolutions would have fallen by the wayside. And a lot of people are going to actually be right back where they were in December. And as a panel, I wanted to explore, how do you, or how would you coach somebody, or how would you talk to somebody about keeping like whether it's a vision, whether it's recreating, how would you keep them inspired in a new year so as to make 2023 the best year ever?
Well, first off, don't set New Year's resolutions.
Right,
Just like
right.
that's straight off the bat.
I
Okay,
haven't
yes,
heard that word resolutions in a while.
I know.
and
I
And for anybody that has set New Year's resolutions, because that is the general societal reflection time, that's okay. And allow yourself to recognize whether they were set from a place of genuine intention and thought through, or whether they were spur of the moment. If they were spur of the moment, let them go. If they were genuine intentions, by all means, navigate through and play with how to continue engaging with them. So the problem with New Year's resolutions is people set them in the middle of the night in a place of social pressure, leveraging other people's energy, and aren't tapping into and following their own inner guidance, their own wisdom, their own structure, strategy, all of those things. So one of the worst things I know for me to do is to set goals in the presence of somebody else, because I'm doing it off their energy and I'm doing it off their emotions. So set them over a time frame and allow myself a full month to navigate through and percolate on goals and explore. And the more I learn about the human design, and I know that's my obsession right now, but the more I learn about that, the more that is a good strategy, because it means that we've navigated through. So it takes 29 days for the moon to move through all of the 64 gates of the I Ching in the human design. So a full month means that I felt every different energy of every different gate, and I can then set aligned, sustainable goals. So set goals that are sustainable. That would be my first piece of advice. I've got plenty more, but I'll let somebody else speak and tap into that. But that's where I'm starting, is set sustainable goals, not spur of the moment whims.
I'm
Brilliant.
just really, really happy that I heard these three words come out of Amy's mouth. Set sustainable goals. She said it. I love it.
Well,
I mean, is that, I mean,
so say
go
more,
back to
Andrew.
the
You know,
episodes, I was like, this is amazing.
Well, we'll navigate what I mean by goals shortly.
so Angelina, what do you think about this New Year's time?
Well, listen, we talked about this in previous episodes, that this New Year's time is just a date, and that setting sustainable goals, or whatever you want to call it, intentions, whatever it is that you want, it can happen at any time of the year. So this is just the reason why we're having this conversation is because there's so much like emphasis put on this specific date to start anew. And for those people who did leverage that, kind of like that collective reset, collective refresh that we chose to participate in, 5 words came up for me as you were talking, and I actually just wrote it down. That came up for me to that explains kind of what I feel will help people stick with it and stay on track and actually reach the destination. And the first word is clarity, in just knowing what the destination is. And again, clarity, the destination is the goal, destination is the intention, so that you can set your GPS, so you can set your compass, to that course, and to let you know that you're on track or not. And also, once you're clear with that, is to make the decision and to really decide if you want it or not, and not
choose.
To choose and not sit in the middle, because you're always going to be half-ass, going through and in the pursuit of what you want. The third word was to declare your intention, to declare what it is that you're creating and wanting to do, and make it real for you. The fourth word is to commit, to actually commit 110%, 100% at the very minimum, to commit to your goals, to commit to your dreams, to commit to making sure that you get to that destination and enjoying the journey along the way. And finally, the fifth word is, I got that from Jim, and it was a great reminder, is to find a way to leverage accountability, whether it's an accountability partner or joining an accountability group. Surround yourself with people who will hold you accountable, call you out, lift you up, and to just keep you in the energy of what you want. That's it. And
that is such a beautiful place to start. And the only thing I'm going to add, and this is from a long time ago, is as you look at 2023, it's literally time to full ass it. if you've been
Let's get back into the
half-assing it,
full ass.
right? Get back to that full-assing it. If you've been half-assing it, notice the places and quite literally choose to stop and choose to get back in action. Because the thing that is going to make 2023 incredible, quite simply, is you. And it's you being in action with what both Coach Amy and Coach Angelito or Mentor Amy. Should I call you Mentor Amy or Coach Amy?
I'd rather you didn't give me a title at all to some degree.
Okay.
The Amy was one thing that I got
Okay.
for a little while.
Tell
The
you what,
Amy Taylor.
the Amy,
I don't know that I'm a huge fan of that either.
She's a
Right?
multi-title-nista.
I know,
Title
and
holder, multi-title holder.
yeah, multi
What is it?
titleista,
Multi-passionista.
multi-titleista.
We'll keep with that. Multi-passionista.
And
Multi-passionista.
we joke, but at the end of the day, quite literally, it is action that is going to move you forward. My book coach has me pretty much rewriting all the sections because I didn't quite write them. And it makes all the sense in the world. But literally this morning, I was like, I'm not going to open Facebook until I have at least 2 sections done. I got 1 section done before I had to get ready for the recording and everything. And I'm in the middle of the second one. And it just, I don't know how to say this other than it just feels good to not bog my time down on social media and to actually like I'm literally like, my mind says, well, you're about 50%. But let me tell you, I am closer than I realize to actually getting this book out, to actually having a book, creating a group. I have to do some work to create an online meditation. I got some other things to do. There's going to be a YouTube channel, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And the thing that I want every person to think about is, are you excited about what you're creating in 2023? Because to both of, I mean, it's actually interesting because if you look at Amy around human design, literally she lights up. And you know, if you take a look, do you light up when you think about what you are creating for 2023? Because if you light up, if you're in action, if you do what my panelists have said, the quite natural thing is you're going to create a 2023 that is literally the best year yet.
Mhm. I
Thoughts?
absolutely agree. Yeah, right on.
Amy is pondering. The
Amy's
Amy is
pondering.
pondering.
No, I was thinking as you were sharing, all of the things that you have planned, and I immediately started thinking about all of the things that I'm working on right now. And I was just having a conversation earlier this morning with a colleague, and I was expressing like, I feel like I'm starting to get a little overwhelmed because I look at all of the things that I have to get done, and I can't work fast enough, and I wish I could clone myself, and then I start to like breathe a little heavier or a little shallower, and then I remembered that this is a pattern that I want to leave behind in 2022, of getting overwhelmed, realizing that the best way to eat an elephant is piece by piece. That's probably not the best
No,
analogy.
It's a great metaphor.
because
It's
then
just
you
not
have-
the
because
best.
then you
I
have
mean,
to think
who's
about
eating
eating an
elephants?
Yeah,
Then
yeah,
I
yeah,
get
yeah.
the
No.
visual about eating an elephant.
Nobody
and then I think,
eats,
what
yeah.
piece do I eat first? Yeah, so
Right?
horrible for me because I'm a very visual person, but you get it, right? It's a big thing. And plus, like with whatever it is that you're using, that same metaphor as an elephant, with an elephant, whatever it is that you're creating, you're birthing an elephant. How long does an elephant take to give birth?
18 months.
18 months, right? It's not
Mhm.
like you're birthing a chicken or like a butterfly that takes days. You're birthing an elephant. This is a dream, whatever it is that you're creating. So give yourself some slack, be patient with yourself, and do things step by step and eat it chunk by chunk, piece by piece. Because eventually, by the end of this year, that whole elephant's going to be in your tummy and it's going to taste so good.
I want to expound upon something you said, not the tummy, the patterns, because what I noticed in the latter part of December, and I actually noticed this on New Year's Eve, and I actually literally sat down, had a mental conversation. I was following an old pattern that I was going to get to about 70% of where I would actually go, and then I was just going to let it go. And on New Year's Eve, I chose that I was going to finish this book
Mhm.
because there had been, I want to say, almost a week where there was no action happening. And if you're out there listening, my question to you is, what are your patterns from the past that if you begin to see them come up, the moment you see them come up, you have the opportunity to say, yeah, I'm going to keep that pattern going. Yep, I'm gonna. I mean, it's interesting, right? One of the primary reasons I hired a coach is because had I not hired a coach, here's what would have happened. I would have started. I would have been writing it by the end of December. I would have just said, well, okay, I've got enough done, and it would not be where it is today. But my commitment to this year is I am breaking the pattern.
Mm. Yeah, by hiring a coach, you put skin in the game.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
have accountability. You have someone that's keeping you on track and who's got a path that you follow, so that you're not like constantly figuring out, like, how do I put this section together? What do I write here? Like, is this even going to work? How do I put a book together?
Yeah.
And you're able to and you collapse time by hiring someone and when working with someone, right? Like, and
Well,
that's why I love the work that we do, is because that's what we get to do for other people.
I know. And the most interesting thing lately is about 4 a.m. I get up and I can't really, all of a sudden I am awake until about 5:30. I almost got up and started writing because all I could think about was, now that I know my and I've just, and yesterday I got 5 sections done. And then all of a sudden I hit the sixth one, and the sixth one, when I was writing it, I used a much more structured format. Man, it made it so simple that I was just like, I was literally ready to get out of bed, come out here, do some work for a little bit. And then when I got tired, I would go back to bed. And it also came last night, I was watching some videos, and some videos said that we humans are not designed for an 8-hour night. We're actually designed for 2 4-hour sleep periods. And I was like
Mm.
thinking, that's an interesting concept because it kind of actually has been working for me. I've been going to bed about 11. I get up at like 4-ish, and I'm up for a few hours. And then like lately, I've actually adjusted my time I get up back 90 minutes just because it's what's work. I'm following my own inner guidance on when to get up, when to schedule things, etc. That's another way that I know by following that inner guidance, I'm in a better space every single day. And that is what's going to make 2023 a better year. It's how these things that I'm setting up, whether you call them goals, whether you call them intentions, it's how they're going to, I'm being in action. It's how they're going to get done.
Yeah, I think listening to and attuning with our natural rhythms is very, very key to creating that life we love, which is what I think we all aim for with our clients to some degree. That's my language for it. But I know, Angelita, you're creating that freedom space, but it's creating the life they love, and for your clients as well, Jim. But creating the life we love is built off understanding ourselves. And if we don't understand ourselves, then what happens is we follow other people's strategies, other people's systems, and for the stuff that we want to have, that's a really good way of doing it. So for you, Jim, like, you want to write that book, you've got a book coach working with you to navigate through, and you're following the structure that's put in front of you for having that author title, for having the completed book. It's great. For who we want to be, following someone else's system is never going to work. And so my goals are always broken into, what do I want to be? What do I want to do? What do I want to have? It's a really basic coaching model, that be, do, have. but I spend far more time these days looking at the being than looking at the doing and the having. And so for me, while I've got those external goals, I want to connect with and rewrite my own book again this year. I want to have the human design program done by the end of the month, because I'm leveraging the current transits. The 16, which is enthusiasm, disappears on the 5th of February. And so I want that human design, while I've got this energy, while I've got this momentum, I want that completed while I can leverage this transit energy, because 16 is a very significant gate for me, and it is the gate of enthusiasm. So I'm going to leverage that very, very intensely. And at the same time, I'm tapping into archetypes. So I've got all kinds of things that I'm planning, not so much around accountability about what I'm doing, but accountability about who I'm being. So the coach I've currently got hired, she runs a program called Coach Spirit, and it's not about business strategy. It's not about that the doing or the having. It's all about the being. And so we meet once a fortnight, and what I intend to take to her, and I know she's got exercises, so once a month we will do my agenda, and once a month we'll do her agenda, and her and I are both happy with that. But my intention is to go with, I've got my archetype wheel mapped out for the next 12 months. I laid it out in November, and I've got 36 archetypes in the 12 houses, transitioning with tarot cards. And then I've got 2 I Ching cards there, but this is all about who am I being. And then the other piece that I want to layer in is the human design. And I want to do weekly, where am I at in terms of accessing my authority, like my inner guidance system? How am I doing with the transits? What gates are coming into play, and all of that kind of stuff. So I'm very focused on who am I being, and who I'm being is who I'm being, getting closer to my true core version of me, my whole and complete version of me, or am I still operating from conditioning? And so that discernment between, is this conditioned or is this innate? And I was doing that with a client last night. She's like, I've got this pattern. And I'm like, all right, well, is that a conditioning that we need to unravel? Or is this something that is innate within you? Let's look at the chart. We went to the human design chart. And so she has, it's a mismatch of pattern. And I have it as well. Like you say one thing, you say it's black, I'll say it's white, just for the sake of it. But that's innate in my chart. That's not conditioned. It's actually innate in my chart. It's one of the few pieces of me that I've held on to and haven't been shaped out of. So how do I leverage it for good? Because even with our innate stuff, we're going to have the shadow side and we're going to have the light side. So we need to leverage that. But the mismatch is not going anywhere. And I think both of you love that in me, which is a good place to start. There's probably some people out there that don't love that in me, that aren't pleased to see that that's not on my deconditioning list. There are the other things. So the motivation for me is not driven by money, but I've been so conditioned that I have to be profitable and I have to be all of these things. And remembering that's a conditioning. It's not in my chart. It's not there. And so I think working out who we want to be and the intentions around that, and how are we measuring that? So it's easy enough to measure, okay, I did this many words, or I did this many sections in my book, or I did this many modules in my course, or I did this many dollars in my business. Those external, what we're having is easy to measure, but how are we measuring those inner world goals? I don't know if either of you set them, but I'm looking at, how do I check in that I am releasing old stuff? And for me, that is accountability buddies. It is the woman I've been speaking with for 5 years. Every week we speak. And in those moments where I forget how far I've come, she says, I know you 5 years ago, and you are no longer being that same version of you. And so having that mirror, because I forget, once we integrate something new into our being, we forget what we used to be. And we're now looking at, this is who I'm still being. This is the pattern. There are so many patterns all of us have let go of. So the 3 of us on the panel, but all of us out there in the world as well, anyone watching this, there's so many patterns that we let go of that we often forget. We had friends come over the other night. I don't know, I'm talking a lot. I'll shut up in a second. We had friends come over the other night for dinner who I haven't seen in I reckon it's probably 12 months that we used to do it every week. They used to live down the road. Our kids are the same age. Kids used to just be at various houses. The kids weren't here, they were there, kind of thing. And we'd go backwards and forwards. We spent a lot of time together. So they know the version of me from 5 years ago very well. They know the version of me from 12 months ago very well. But I shared with them that I'd written my book and took my book out. And one of the things that he used to get quite a lot of joy from was mocking my next, because I'm so passionate, there's so many new things, he'd get joy from that. And I used to really take it personally and be attacked by it and react really well. He'd get a really good reaction. And so he continued doing it. I don't react now. So he was mocking me. So my book is called Create a Home You Love. And he's like, well, it's a work in progress because you've been working on that for a decade. Like you went to have that jab at me and have that dig. And I went, yeah, you're right. Absolutely, it's a work in progress. And I could see the look of, darn it, that didn't work. Now, there are things that you can say to me, as you witnessed the other day, Jim. There are things you can say to me, not you, it was someone else you were witnessing, that will trigger me deeply and have that version of me come back to life.
Oh, let me tell you.
You can work to earn it, Angelina. You can work it out.
Up and not.
Yeah, I don't. It was yeah, and that was quite educational. And then it was funny because the other person just would not back down. And
Where was it?
I had no clue how much of a personal attack it was. I'm not empowering you with this information, Angelina. You'll
Well,
have to work for it.
It's funny because I have this conversation with Neto, that
Uh-huh.
like where I say like I don't like gossip. I don't like to hear anyone else's
right.
life. But then I'm also the first to be like, so what happened?
Oh, yeah.
what is it
Ooh.
going? Like, oh, really?
Oh,
Like,
so yeah.
the-
So say more, Amy.
so I
Ooh.
do have to.
What was it?
Even though I say I don't like gossip, I tend to participate in those kinds of conversations.
Well,
Only because
it's-
I'm curious. I want to know the answer. I don't
Yeah.
like to spread it, and I don't like to
Yeah.
pass it on. I just like to know things.
And maybe when we're not on recording, I'll confess, though I don't know that you need to be empowered with the 3 words that are going to trigger me.
No, yeah, it was well, and it's funny because I was like, wow, I'm like, I was ready to go get some popcorn because quite literally, it's like this third person, like, and I thought it was handled so professionally. I was just, and I finally got to
So
the
in
point
that, in
because the other
in-
person was not backing down, and I'm finally like, you know something,
Ooh,
I'm tired of
conflict.
this. And the minute I left, everything
Yeah.
resolved.
it wasn't quite the minute you left, but
Well,
there
not the
was
minute, but
definitely a
yeah.
shift there was a shift in energy. The other thing in that moment, though, you got a glimpse of the me from 5 years ago, and it was only a split second that version of me came to life, because I literally turned red in response. Like there was a full
Yeah.
physiological response, and then in that moment, I was able to, okay, this is not personal. Ground yourself, and I challenged it. I'm like, I want you to think about what you just said to me.
Which
But
I
it was
thought
a-
was
it
so
was a-
brilliant. I have to remember that the next time. Do you fully understand what you just said?
But that was a very grounded. So the me of 5 years ago would have come back, and I know exactly how to provoke that other person. Like in the same way that what was said to me was deeply provoking and deeply triggering, I know exactly how to do that to the other person. But in that moment, I'm like, this is not personal. Don't go to personal attacks. Don't go there. Whereas
Yeah.
5 years ago, and even 2 years ago, so the guy at the kitchen bench, one of the reasons that he gets away with what he does is he shares none of himself. I don't know what his trigger points are,
Right.
other than
Right.
the PowerPoint in the middle of the kitchen bench, which is a whole other conversation. But he knows and I don't have as many anymore. So 5 years, and we're probably going back longer than that now, 7 to 10 years ago. This is a man I've been hanging out with since before my daughter was born. Like, he's been in my life a long time. I am very open and share, and it's easy to spot my trigger points, whereas it's not reciprocated. And
Yep.
so, whereas with you, Jim, like you and I, we've got a couple of things that we banter backwards and forwards, but we're equally triggered, and like there's a level of vulnerability from both sides, which is where I
And
choose to
a level
play.
of respect, because we can
Oh,
play in
absolutely.
the field of trigger. I mean, you saw me a few weeks ago, you saw me get incredibly triggered.
Yes. Yes, and again,
and
I
you
was
have the
looking for
video.
popcorn.
I know, Angelino. It's just,
Yeah.
it's
I
Um,
love it. I love hearing it. I love hearing it. But hearing you guys talk about these heated, like emotional, like um um experiences,
interactions.
reminds me of like one of the other things that I decided to leave in 2022 is having an emotional like having like an emotional investment in everything. Like I need to remove emotion from a lot of things.
But
So this is great
but
to be the outsider looking in. I'm like, oh, this is cool. Like,
but don't you have to be cautious with that? Because like if you think about it, and if you're listening to this, whether you're a coach, whether you're a manager, a human, we all get to see like there is a beauty in our triggers. Our triggers quite literally, they point the direction for our next step of healing.
Mm.
Like right?
yeah, it's great to have that trigger. I
Mhm.
think where the reason why I wanted to be able to compartmentalize my emotions a little bit better is in choosing a proper response to those triggers rather than reacting with emotion, right? So if I
Yeah.
am able to say,
Yeah.
like, so there are some things, I've shared this before, like right now I'm in LA and I'm getting a chance to hang out with my folks, and like it's been a few months now since I've been here, and I'm at that time now where it's like, oh, I can't wait to get back on the road, and like so my dad and I have these conversations, and he'll say things that remind me of old triggers of like, oh, why are you? I'm not 10 anymore, like you don't need. And then just earlier this morning, because it was raining, he was like, put a cap on, and my first response was like, "Ah, it's not even raining, like it's not even raining, like stop telling me what to do." I didn't say it. It was in my head. That was the
You're not the
reaction.
boss of me.
Yeah, and then I realized, wait, I can choose my reaction, I can choose the emotion. Why am I putting so much emphasis on this and emotion on this? Like, okay, cool. And then I just carried on. I was like, I don't need this emotion to take me where I want to actually be and go. So I was able to discard it, and like, because it's unresourceful, right? So that's what I'm talking about. So I absolutely
Yeah.
believe in triggers, like you just said. It's the handling the triggers with the proper response.
Which is growth
If I'm
points, which
hearing,
is, yeah. Well, go ahead, Amy, go.
as you say, if I'm hearing accurately, Angelito, it's the still have the trigger, because the other day in that conversation with the third party with Jim, I was highly triggered, but I responded because my initial response was fuck off, how dare you, and I had a list of personal attacks that I could have thrown back. Like that was my internal, and Jim saw that moment where that was the version of me that was about to come out. And I think there was almost a part of you, Jim, I don't know if this is accurate or not, but it's like, push again, see if you can provoke that part out. I should see what that version of me looks like.
Well,
on
and
the outside.
if we're being authentic, I kind of had to give, other than the personal attacks, I kind of had to give the third person a little bit of credit, because
He was doing amazingly
was
standing up to me, because
what
I was stubborn. He was not yielding.
Yeah, was not backing down one bit. And I mean, and it's he's attempted to do the same thing, and I'm not going to back down on my coaching philosophies. Like I've been doing this since December of 2005. I understand what I understand.
Yeah. But in that moment, there was that version of me was like, it was so close to the surface, and
It was
took
palpable.
me,
It was literally, but it took you 30 seconds or less
it
to go
took
back
me
down.
a moment to just ground, and that's what I think you're talking about, Angelito, is have that moment. It's like, what? And have the 10-year-old voice pop up. I don't need to wear a hat. Who are you to tell me to wear a hat? And then ground
I know, right?
Well,
After
and
thinking about
ground,
it, I was
and
like,
then
wow.
just say thank you. Like there's this place of, and that's what I was able to do the other day. Instead of that visceral "fuck you, how dare you," all of those words that came to mind, I toned and I just said, I just want you to reflect on what you just said to me. And I don't think it was quite that calm in that moment. I think there was a little bit more emotion in it in the moment.
Yeah, there was edge. Let me tell you, there was edge. And the sad part of that is it wasn't recorded because we had stopped the recording.
Yeah, it was recorded. No, it is recorded.
Oh.
We have the recording of that. But it was this, and there was edge, but it wasn't the edge of fuck you and I'm going to come back at you with personal attacks. There was edge of, hey, that just hurt me. Please consider what you said to me. And it would have come as anger rather than, but it was hurt. Like my anger was there to mask the hurt because I was deeply hurt in that moment. But I think that's what you're saying, Angelito. It's that have that moment of where we're deeply hurt or deeply triggered and can still ground ourselves in 30 seconds or less. I remember recording a video with my youngest years ago. We created emotion cards, and there's a video of him. He's 7 and he wrote a book at 7 and is just amazing and wonderful. And but I'm having a conversation with him and I said, and how long does it take those big emotions that overwhelm you? How long does it take to 3 seconds or less, mummy? And I'm just like this enthusiastic 7-year-old, so 3 seconds or less. And yeah, we've got that book is out there, which is very, very cool. And in essence, they're the systems that I'm employing, but it's the how not to let, because I remember years ago, a trigger like that would have had me reeling for weeks, if not months.
Mm-hmm.
And that bitterness would keep coming through in the conversations, that frustration. Whereas as Jim witnessed, that there was edge in that first response. And I think there was probably edge in my second or third response because the first response didn't get any. It's like, think about what you just said. And this person just continued on with the personal attack and continued on with and so there was probably edge in the second or third response. But by the time I got to the fourth or fifth response, I had grounded and I was calm again. I think that's what you're talking about, Angelito. It's like have the triggers, but don't let them control and shape our actions for more than a moment. And that's the journey.
I mean, I reflect back years ago, and this is probably going on 10 years. You know, I often, people that know me, I love shadow work. I really love shadow work. It's because of my life experiences, I have a very, very dark shadow. And roughly 10 years ago was the last time I let that aspect of me out to play, simply because the cleanup that it takes after I come back to a space of peace, there is so much cleanup. I do not want to create that space in life anymore because I would rather live from a space of peace as best I can. And yet I still get triggered. It is
the triggers aren't going away.
No, but our but you know,
but our responses can be mitigated.
Yeah, and as we transform ourselves, our responses become more. I mean, you regrounded yourself within 30 seconds each time.
And that's the practice of shadow work. So those moments where, so that personal attack caught me off guard because it's not one I've heard in a long time. But I've lived my worst nightmare. I've talked about comedy on the show before when I went and did stand-up comedy and I stood on stage and nobody laughed at my joke that was the funniest in my set from my perspective. That was me living out a trigger and gave me the opportunity. So I had that nightmare playing out on stage. I told what I thought was my funniest joke. No one laughed. And I had a choice in that moment to go into a shame spiral and get consumed by that. Or I had the choice in that moment to ground myself and reconnect with the audience. And what others were doing in that space of the jokes not laughing, they were trying to defend the jokes and fight for the jokes and blaming me. It's like, why don't you think this is funny? Whereas I just went, okay, well, clearly you guys don't think it's funny. I think it's funny. And I moved on. But that is the shadow work in action. Because my worst nightmare was that I wasn't funny. And in that moment, I wasn't funny and I was okay. and I could move forward. But it's years of practice of those moments of tapping into versions of myself that I was unfamiliar with through the shadow work.
You know,
Yeah.
the book that I've mentioned in the past here, the one that really helped me understand everything that we're talking about here is the book by Viktor Frankl. Not a
Oh.
Man's Search for
Yeah,
Meaning,
Man's Search for
Man's
Meaning.
Search for Meaning.
yeah,
That
it's
was
where
such
where
a powerful.
Yeah, so he taught, the whole book is centered, it's not around, of course it describes the experience in the Holocaust, but the main message of the book is where he talks about the difference between stimulus and response. And I actually pulled up the quote where he says, between stimulus and response there is a space, and in that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. So it's what we do within that space of being triggered and either reacting or responding. Reacting is powerless, right? That's when we allow our emotions to dictate how we behave. Responding gives the power back to you. You having dominion over your body, dominion over your words, dominion over how you feel. And so that's what if I'm correct, that's what I'm hearing, what Amy's explaining as well, is like, yeah, have that trigger and feel it, but choose a more empowering response.
Yeah. And in that moment recently where I was triggered, there was that gap between, so the trigger was there, my instant response, which I managed to keep vocally internally, my face betrays me frequently. I have no poker face, but I was able to not come back with what I wanted to say initially, which would have been a reactive space. It was just you attack me, I'm going to attack you. That's my fight flight response kicking in. Whereas I was able to go, okay, those feelings are valid, Amy. And this is in a split second. It's like, those feelings are valid. Let's tone them down and very calmly replay. It's like, was that intentional on the other person's part? It's like, do you realize you just had a personal attack on me? And the answer was a no. And he continued with the personal, like, hang on, this has got to stop. But it was a very grounded response. And it was in that moment between feeling the trigger and opening my mouth. And there was possibly a gasp, like a audible, like, are you kidding me? That's what you just said in that moment. But yeah, it's absolutely that. I must
so
go
now
and
you're going to
revisit.
have to explain this at some point or share it, but because the audience wants to know.
I feel like that Angelito wants to know, and he's leveraging the audience
on behalf
as a way of
I mean,
convincing
everyone
me.
watching.
Yeah. I mean,
Well,
I think
in
of that-
essence, someone said something to me that went to my deepest, darkest fears and my deepest worries and spoke to, and it's the equivalent of saying to me, you're not funny, when I walk off stage as a comedian.
Oh,
Right.
It was that
Right.
level of intensity of just
Got it.
triggering my deepest fears, which I'm not going to empower the world with knowing.
You know what it is?
No, because it doesn't.
But you said it earlier. It triggered the 5-year-old, the version of you from 5 years ago, and just because, like, I know you let go of that, but you're no longer that person. It still had some kind of a connection, but
it's still got a connection. There is shadow
always
work for me to do in this. There is a space for me to embrace that part of me. It always will until I do the
it
shadow
always
work.
will. And but even when you do the shadow work, because like when I had
I
my little
think once I've
meltdown,
done the shadow work, it'll soften the intensity quite considerably. It won't maintain that intensity based on other experiences. I could be wrong, though.
It may, but even when I had a meltdown, I was continually regrounding myself, because there was a point that I was ready to leave the conversation, and literally the voice inside my head is like, absolutely not. You committed to being here. You committed to sharing your opinion, even though I was the only one that had a different opinion than everybody else. You know, I just and my victory was just staying in the game, because
As I say, you stayed, and I could see how hard that was for you in that conversation. So we had a conversation, and it wasn't deliberate on my part, but I triggered the crap out of Jim.
and you enjoyed that.
Well, yeah, and then I was getting off on it because it was fun. And it wasn't me initially. We were looking at a certain type of profile together, and the profile initially was
A
what
useless
created
profile. The most but I'll let that go.
Um,
Oh, so
it
again,
clearly fired something off for you.
Oh, this whole
Well-
I could go another hour with this topic.
I
but
mean,
where
we
we've
really could.
gone.
But the one thing I will say, like unbeknownst to everybody there, I was also dealing with some
You had
personal
other stuff
strife.
on.
And the personal strife was being brought right into
Ooh.
everything happened because like the thing that occurred personally happened just before that call. And it was still all like everything was there. And yet I have to say, overall, I have to reflect back and said it was handled in a better way than I would have 5 years ago, 10 years ago.
And I think that right there is how we make 2023 the best year for ourselves. Is
Yes.
that so? Yeah, there was that moment where you weren't necessarily the version of you that you want to be all the time, but you can see the growth and you can come with compassion. And when
Mhm.
we can come with the compassion, because those patterns that we want to leave in 2022, some of them are going to creep into 2023, whether we
Absolutely.
want them to or not.
Compassion for the other people, but more importantly, compassion for yourself.
Yeah, and
Yep.
that's what I was
Compassion
meaning.
for-
Have that
for the triggers,
compassion
yeah.
for ourselves in those moments where we are triggered, where we notice patterns coming up that we've had before. Recognize the progress you have made, because I guarantee we have all made progress in some
Yep.
area. We are still
Yep.
here. We are still making progress, and be okay. We are human.
Yeah,
There are moments where people are going to say stuff to us, and we're going to be flared up, and it's okay to be human.
it's part of the human experience. So on that
Yes.
note, we're going to wrap up this Empower Hour. I want to, if you've been listening to this, thank you. If you are on YouTube, please like it and subscribe, because there is going to be more and more and more content. So, and to a big thank you to Angelito and to Amy. You guys are what makes this magical. And if you're listening, you are also what makes it magical. And thanks. Maybe you guys a quick little thank you, and then we'll close this one out.
Yeah, thank you both of you for the stimulating conversation, and I feel like we're just getting started. It took
Yes.
us
I know. Ah.
yeah, like I don't even know if we stayed on topic, but this is so like I'm so excited about this topic. But maybe we can continue it
We
in
can
another episode.
we can do a whole nother
Um,
episode on just
yeah,
this.
for sure.
Yeah,
Like,
trigger points, and tell
trigger-
you what, matter of fact, next week, why don't we do trigger points and shadow work? Because I just finished a book about that. So matter of fact, next week, let's talk about shadow. Let's talk about the shadow side.
Cool.
Beautiful.
Sounds good.
Love it.
Yeah.
Thank you
you for
both.
Okay,
And thanks,
thank you
everyone.
both. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay.